In this lesson titled Splitting Text, we're in Workbook Lesson 12, Data Management, and we're currently on the Splitting Text Worksheet tab. Splitting text helps us solve a lot of problems. For instance, this is very useful to have a last name and then first name for sorting, but I might want the last name in one column and the first name in a different column. Also, over here on our address line, we cannot really sort on zip or state because they're all connected here. So we might want to have our own column for state and a separate column for zip code. Well, text to columns solves that problem for us. So in order to use it, first we create the room where we want to extract the data from to put it somewhere. So we need to have some room. So on this B column, I'm going to right click and choose Insert. It gives me an extra column, and I'm going to extract the first name and put it over here. So I could type first like that. So let's go ahead and click on this text to columns. It's found in the Data tab, and over here in the Data Tools group, it's called Text to Column. And it says no data was selected to parse. And that is because you always have to select your data first. So let's try that again. If you see that error, don't panic. So what is it we want to extract? Well, over here in this column, click again on Text to Column. Now this time it opens up a wizard that has 3 steps in it. At first it says, I have identified that your data is delimited. And delimited means there's a character such as a comma or a tab that is separating each field. In this case, yes, there is. There's a comma separating last name from first name. So very good. So that's correct so far. I'm going to say next. Next it says, it tries to guess what it's using to separate your data. What's the delimiters that's in use? And you might have to change it if it gets it wrong. Sometimes it says tab, when really it's comma. Some say comma. Now sometimes you might have some interesting data, like 2 pieces of text that you want to separate and they have an asterisk between them. Then you could go over here and click Other and say asterisk. And sometimes you just have 2 words with just a space between them, so you could use space instead of comma. In this case, if I use tab here and uncheck comma, you'll see that it's not separating my data. But if I do comma, uncheck tab here, you'll see it's actually using a column separation line and showing me how it's going to separate my data. It's going to leave Shannon behind, and James, it's going to move over to the adjacent column. And that's just what I wanted to do. So I'm going to click Next. And now it's going to ask me some questions about formatting. And, you know, it is text, so I'll say, yeah, why don't we change that to text? But general would work as well. And then I can click Finished. So here it did it. It took Shannon, it separated out the James, and it put it over here. Now, it might be very useful to do all of this at the same time instead of doing each one of these independently. And to do that, you would simply have selected all of your A column and then gone over to Text to Columns. But we'll be demonstrating that very shortly. Let's separate the city from the state and zip over here. So to do that, I am going to create one more column. I'll right click on E, choose Insert. This time I'm going to select the entire column D and click on Text to Columns. And you can see here now the preview is showing all of our information. All the rows are listed here. Preview all the way down. It did notice some delineation. This is very good. We'll say Next. It is a comma, and it does show us how it's going to separate our data. This is important. Click Next. And I really don't care about changing the format, so I'm going to say Finish. And it says there's already some data here. Do you want to replace it? This is a common error, I would say, in Excel, where when you create a new column, it thinks there's data in there. The best guess is it has to do with some formatting, probably the formatting here at the very top, but that's not a problem. I'm going to say OK. and you can see it moved it over. Now this is really quite clever. It even figured out state and zip code to move it over from city. That's very clever. So we can do one more separation now to separate the state and the zip code and do our delineation this time based on space. And I think you can see how that would work. So you can play around with this great feature, text to columns. It works great, especially when there's any kind of delineation, like a comma or a space or some other character.